back. We'll open the board meeting for November 14th, 2023. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Freedom. I just want to mention to those folks that did speak here at the open forum today, we take the information at the open forum. We usually do not respond from the dais at this time, but then we advise staff to take a look at the items that were addressed. So there should be some follow-up on the issues that you brought forward today. Thank you. Okay, roll call will show that all members are present today. We'll go ahead and we'll take a look at the agenda. Board members, before you have the agenda for today's meeting. Dr. Williams, are there any other additions to the agenda?
There's no additions, Mr. Chair, but there was some information missing on the consent agenda items that you were just handed information on that was missing from the agenda system. E14 and 15, they were both unanimous actions by the Planning Commission at their last meeting. Okay. But if you want a minute to review those and do that when Environmental Services comes up or later in the meeting, that's fine. There's also the actual copies of the full contracts of those police services contracts, I think we're also missing. Those are the same contracts that we've done every year. We have people from the Sheriff's Office here if we want a little more description of that. I think they're even pretty much in the same amounts as last year for those 4 cities as well. So however you want to handle those, the information was missing. The planning stuff was just handed out. I have the amounts of the police contracts in front of me if you want me to read those off, or however you want to handle those, Mr. Chair.
Oh, okay.
And we apologize for that information missing. As you know, we have this is the first time using this new agenda builder system, and apparently there was some kind of a glitch.
Okay. Well, then let's go, first of all, let's approve the overall agenda.
So move.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second. Any more discussion on the agenda? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now we'll move on to the consent agenda, which includes those items from Environmental Services. And I will say that we have the information provided in front of us. There were both unanimous decisions by the Planning Commission, and I have no reason to pull them, but if any of you would like to pull them, we can.
I'll move the acceptance of the consent agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'll second that, but I'll ask that E6 be removed, please.
All right. So, okay, we've got a motion.
That wasn't my motion.
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm not against that because that's obviously a practice. So Jeff, do you have questions about that? And are we going to do that under environmental, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, well, let's first of all, with the agenda, was there anything else that needed to be pulled?
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we'll take that motion to approve all of it. Anything else that was to be pulled except for E6? If not, I'll accept that motion to approve everything except E6, if you're okay with that, Carol?
Yep.
Okay, so I need a second.
I did second that.
Okay, all right.
I needed to modify my motion, that was all.
Okay. Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. So E6, do we have that for environmental then?
Why don't we?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, we'll put that under environmental then. Then we'll move on to auditor treasurer.
So we have is annual fee setting, and with me today is Sarah Utsch, our finance director, and Jeff Swenson, our accounting supervisor, and they'll go over that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Sarah
Good
Utsch,
morning.
Finance Director. Just got a couple quick slides for you this morning to kind of present or lay up the presentation for the public hearing this morning, so we can talk about what we are looking for public hearing on. Every year, the Auditor Treasurer's Office looks at 25% of the fees that are charged for different services that the county provides. So we just go by department and do that on a rotating schedule. We determine the staff time and supplies that are needed and look at an average cost. And then we compare also to neighboring counties, cities, others that provide that service, and kind of come up with a recommendation on what we think the public fee schedule should look. I believe it's in the board packet. There are some details on the fees that were reviewed this year. Those up for review were the Auditor Treasurer's Office and the fees in the Highway Department. We also give any department at that time an option to change their fees if they have something that they would like to change. And I believe Human Services removed one fee as a result of that. These are the fee changes that are being proposed. It's kind of small on the screen. This was published in the official newspaper of the county. And in addition, because we did do a change to the liquor licenses, we were required to reach out to all establishments that hold licenses. We did that back in October to let them know of these upcoming changes. Our office did not hear anything, any comments or questions, neither by email, phone, or in writing. And so these changes are the ones that we are here today to propose. Randy, did you want to say anything about any individual one of those?
No, I don't. They're pretty much, keeping up with, like the liquor license hasn't been changed for a long time, and we've seen what other jurisdictions are doing. So, and that's pretty much the same with the other ones too. Is nothing really too significant here.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, all of this data that's on the screen is in the packets. This looks like it's more consolidated, or just less tabs, as it were, to look at.
Yes, so this is what was published in the newspaper. This is for the public to understand what the changes are, so what the fees are today and what they will be effective to January 1st, assuming this is the action taken today. The board was provided with all of the detail as far as how much it costs the county to provide that service, if there is a commercial value or not to that service, if it's mandated or not. All of those things were within the board packet and available to the public as part of that.
So it's basically our first two columns that we saw plus notes, correct? It's
Yes.
The change in the years. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Forsky, this is a public hearing eventually.
We'll open it up.
Yep, so actually that's where I'm gonna go to next. We're here today to answer any county commissioners' questions or comments.
If you can go ahead and finish.
Okay.
I'll tell you.
Then we're gonna ask to open a public hearing to seek any public input. And then after that, we will seek board approval of the changes, which will become effective on January 1st.
Jeff, did you have a question?
Yep. Mr. Chairman, did you hear anything from the public?
We did not.
Okay. And then it sounded like that when I was on the council, the league was real big about making sure that you justify the staff time, the cost, all that stuff. That's what, because some cities kind of went off every once in a while and just charged an arbitrary number and were taking the task for it, which they should have been because there was no basis to it. So, but there, it seems like there's a protocol, obviously. And if Jeff's involved with it, I'm sure that he really made sure that happened.
You're right.
So, yeah, Jeff works with the departments to understand the time that goes into each fee, also the number of them we do in a year, and then works with the department to get a recommended fee amount. So, yeah, there is a process. Yeah.
And Mr. Chairman, Sarah, I would assume like some counties, obviously, a smaller county, potentially the expense could be higher because of limited staff or what. So when you compare other counties, I'm sure you take that into effect, a Hennepin versus a Benton, for example.
Yeah, we do take that, and of course, wage rates are a big part of it, because if it takes us the same amount of time as another place, it may or may be higher or lower costs. So we take all those things into consideration when we're making those recommendations.
Okay. And Randy, by statute, we cannot be charging more than the cost of.
Well,
what
if it
takes
is
for us.
of commercial value, we can, but we don't vary much from cost, right?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, can you put up that previous slide? So, for instance, that very first one, compared to the chart in our packet, ours says the same price, 75 and 75. So I'm just curious if,
Our first line isn't the same.
that's just one I noticed when I looked, when you said the changes, liquor license, none of the liquor licenses in here are changed. So I'm assuming it,
Yeah, that's an error that's in that big packet. This one that's up here is the correct one that got published.
okay.
Steve, can you tell if it's just that one that was?
No, it
Yeah,
doesn't look like it is.
It looks like,
it's
Mr. Chair, I think on a previous, it wasn't packet, but previous email, we got these requests.
Right.
So that, I have to admit, that's what I had re-reviewed.
Okay.
But yes, right now, this looks like there's no change in anything.
So there is a notice that went to the paper, and that is.
That's what's on the screen.
Well, this is the same as what went in the paper as far as the notification of the
And
change.
Mr. Chair, actually, if you go, scroll past those, this page shows up, so it's,
Yep. So what Steve's referring to is when it's comparing the rate, the current rate to the proposed rate, the proposed rate wasn't updated in there, so it's showing a percentage change of 0. But then it has your average cost of service, so you can still see the average cost of service and such, but it's not showing you what the proposed fee would be in there.
And Mr. Chair, I think what Commissioner Notch was saying, if we look at page 55, that chart is on
that
there.
chart's on there,
So-
so.
Yep.
Sounds like that might be, it's another,
Well, and we could re-email this to the commissioners so that percentage change column was
They
updated.
like
well,
it.
it'll be important for the public to see that.
Oh, yeah, we can post that.
Let me ask you this, can we go ahead, open the public forum or public hearing? Keep it open and then take action next meeting on it? Would that?
What has been advertised is the change rate. What Steve is referring to is a worksheet we use to get to that rate. So what the public has seen and what we've sent to the liquor establishments was the changed rate. The internal document, right, wasn't updated, but
Just the one column,
everything the
services
public
are.
saw was updated.
Mr. Chairman, I just have to say that I'm really impressed that Steve can read that.
I blew it up on my screen. There's a button on top.
I thought
where
you were
can-
reading it off of that.
Well, that one I can read, but
Oh,
And that
God.
one's easier.
I
yeah, that
can't.
one's easy. It's the chart or the worksheets there. Okay, that was the only thing I noticed was they weren't matching, but.
Thank you.
Oh, okay. I see, yep, I see that. Mhm. Yeah. Should we just move forward with the public hearing?
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. Anybody wishing to testify on the fee structure for Stearns County? Come on up, state your name, and let's hear what you have to say.
Morning, everybody. Dan Ray. I live at 18513 Lindbergh Lane outside of Avon. And I'm here representing the farming baseball team. Okay, we've had 3-2 license out for years now since we haven't been able to purchase 3-2. It's gone down to just Busch Light, which has limited our sales going forward. Last year, we had a wine license, the seasonal, and I'm just wondering, the seasonal wine license, for clarification's sake, that covers strong beer also?
Yes.
Yes, it does. Good. Yeah, good. And it was just a point that came up. The letter went to our president. He said, you need to make sure this is done. First of all, you do a wonderful job. I don't know if anybody knows that, but you do a wonderful
We
job.
think so too.
Yeah, so that covers, and then that's just for the 6 month going forward, like that. And then will we get the same type of display document? We always used to get this will come out, and then it'll clearly say what's there. Yes. And do we see another inspection from the state coming out? No. You don't, so. Just one time, okay, perfect. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak?
John Basil, 3171 County Road 29. As a town board member, I always have a conniption about these fees and everything because we pay our property taxes to pay for government. And I just sent in my money last week again, and I have the same conniption when I talk to our board members. We have a liquor license fee and other little fees. But my point is, why are we have to pay for something twice in reality with these fees we're paying to use government that we've already paid for with our property taxes, and they keep going up and up and up. And I'm not so sure there's any staff out there doing more work to do them. They basically give the form to the person applying for the license, and the person takes that and fills it out, and maybe they don't do it all online, and I don't do any technology because me and technology don't get along. It's too slow. And then they come to us with their license for us to township to sign off on it. And we basically have no expense in that, where they come to our meeting, we're already at the meeting, whatever. So just as somebody that is involved with the township side of it, that I personally, and it's not a township decision, that these fees are really mostly unnecessary unless they're actually doing, a staff member is actually doing something extra, but in reality, they're already getting paid to do their job. Thank you.
Good morning, Peter Wilson, 1108 Celebration Drive, Sartell, Minnesota. The only comment I want to make, I can't say any of these fees are too high or too low, but it's a good indication of the effects of Bidenomics and inflation. And let's hope part 2 of Bidenomics doesn't take place. Kill the survivors.
Anyone else wishing to speak on the fee schedule?
Sandy Clocker, Avon, not on your screen, but in your packet, and I reviewed the agenda, and I reviewed it the last time it was going to be on, is a small disclaimer, and it's about the data requests. And here is the gentleman that stood before Pat kind of said the same thing. We want accountability. We want transparency. We don't always know what goes on behind the scenes with the staff level, and I don't know that you do either. Case in point, I asked for a data request, statute 13, to get the cast vote record information and emails from Randy Schreifel's office. I heard from 2 of the 5 of you that you had contacted or had questions about the cast vote record, and you were going to look into the cast vote record. Now, none of that was in the information that they sent me. I have a copy of a letter from the Secretary of State that also was addressed to the departments, the auditors' departments, and that was not in the
Sandy,
packet.
this is the public hearing on the fee schedule?
So because of the fees that I am paying, they charge fees.
Which fees?
The fees, they charge, it's not up there.
That's what we're on.
That's, yeah.
Yep. If you look at your packet, there is a disclaimer on this agenda where they can charge me for fees to get information. I have been charged fees from the auditor's office through the data request. And as the gentleman before, Peter, had said, why are we paying for information that is our information as a taxpayer?
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak on the fee schedule? If not, I'll go ahead and I'll close the public hearing. Board members, any other questions, information you need?
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate Dan's comments. 1, he made her blush, and 2, Commissioner Mergen would be happy that everything's going to be same because he's big with the farming baseball yet. So I'm glad that Dan showed up this morning.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, if I read it correctly, I think those fees are actually going down.
Is that, yeah.
So he would be extra happy with that.
Share that with Commissioner
It's
Mergen.
half price.
Yeah, half price.
Yeah.
Right. The fees don't always go up, right? Some get
Right.
removed, some
Yeah.
go down.
Good point.
right?
It's
a
good to point
full
that out.
review, so.
It is in a very benchmark moment that wine's important in farming because it used to be only beer. But It's,
Strong.
Okay. Any other questions or comments about it? I just want to say, the issue of taxes is a concern for everybody. I don't think anybody wants to pay more taxes than they should. But the argument is also made about those industries and those incidents that occupy time within the county that don't necessarily affect you. So that those people that are, taking a look at their driver's license, those are the drivers, okay? The people that don't own a car, don't drive, well, should they be paying the extra fee for that? Same thing with restaurants. We send out people to do the inspection to make sure that those places are legitimate and making sure that that's healthy for the public. But should we put that across the board and charge that for everyone? The fees have got to be charged. So whether it's in a fee schedule or whether it's in your regular property tax, it's going to be assessed. The matter of the fairness, I guess, is a matter of opinion, and maybe some folks don't necessarily want to particularly pay for that when they're directly involved in that. But that's what we've decided is going to be the way that we're going to do that. And if you want to change that, well, then we change the structure. And here's your opportunity in which you can do that. If you want to eliminate the fee, you can offer us that opinion, and we will eliminate the fee. However, I think we're going to continue as we are here unless the board will, in a majority vote, make a change on that.
And Mr. Chair, that would mean we'd have to raise property taxes for everybody.
Exactly.
So my understanding, and perhaps staff can correct me where I'm wrong, is that we all are paying a portion, probably a tiny portion of our property taxes towards this. The fees are making up part of the difference. Or we can look at it the opposite way. The fees are paying for part of the time, and the property tax owners are paying a tiny bit towards it because we do value the opportunities to have access to these kinds of establishments or events.
And I will mention that as far as Planning Commission is concerned, the amount of time and the amount of dollars that is played on the Planning Commission to make sure that things are orderly are not covered by the fees of the applicant. They're covered across the board, but there is an added cost that we do charge the applicant just to handle some of the fees because it is rather intense both with time and with cost. So, anyone else have a comment or question?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just maybe a Lee Lensmeyer philosophical one here, but so a seasonal wine license is $150 for 6 months or less, correct? So could I, in essence, apply for one, and in 6 months from now, apply for another one? Can I get two of them in the same 12-month cycle? Because if so, it would be cheaper than taking the annual wine license of $325.
I had a question too.
What's that? Ball clubs? Okay, all right. Okay. Thank you.
We should probably say that for the record because obviously Tammy can't be heard.
So the 6 months wine life is just for nonprofits like a ball club. So, and that's why we went from 300 to 150 is to give them a little bit of a break, right?
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the fee changes.
Okay, I've got a motion to approve the fee schedule changes
I'll second it.
and a second. Any further discussion?
Yep, we can always make a good case why the other person should pay.
Yeah. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Jeez.
Was that an opposition, Lee?
No,
Oh,
I'm
okay.
not the reality is our system isn't perfect, but we're working on it.
Okay, motion passes 5-0. We'll move on to environmental services.
Jeez.
Shelley?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning.
Members of the board, Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. Do you want to take the items we have, or do you want to start with our consent agenda item? That was pulled.
They were passed. They were not
Right,
pulled.
but the pulled item,
Yep.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Number
We can do that
six.
later. We can do that at the end.
Okay, we'll do that at the end. So
do that
let's
at
go
the
ahead.
end. Okay, so Becky Schlorf is here, and we'll go through her agenda item with you, and it's related to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency.
Good morning, Commissioners. Becky Schlorf, Division Supervisor. Before you is we're looking for approval for the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency's 2024-2025 County Feedlot Delegation Agreement and Work Plan. There are no significant changes since the last 2-year delegation agreement and work plan. The one thing I will note at the very end of the packet items, so this would be on page 77, the state legislature this session did make a one-time funding increase to the program, so we are receiving additional funds for this 2-year period. Otherwise, I don't have anything else. I can take any questions.
Okay. Questions for Becky?
Mr. Chair, I'll approve the delegation agreement.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Motion by Steve, second by Lee. Any further discussion? If not, I'll go ahead and call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 Oppose? Motion passes. Okay.
Mr. Chair, then we have the agenda item that you pulled, which was E6.
Okay.
And that was the household hazardous waste marketing agreement. Commissioners Persky and Clark had 2 meetings with staff related to activities associated with the marketing agreement. And we also met with the Director of Framework, Scott Hondel, and had quite a bit of discussion related to activities and marketing strategies and the why we do what we do and where we do it and how we put all those pieces together. So I will yield to Commissioners Persky and Clark to add any additional comments related to the request.
Yes, we met a couple times about that. The group had talked about what is presently been happening as far as advertisement and what was suggested for an increase. And we decided that we would go ahead and allow it to continue with a slight increase of about $5,000. However, we did have concerns about how effective that was. And also pretty much insisted that we'd like to see the change of Saturdays being involved, and there's should be funds available to create that and how we would be able to incorporate to be open every Saturday, and hoping that that's going to take place in the next year. And then, of course, between the advertising and the increase on Saturdays, that we should see an increase in participation as well. So that was kind of this part of it. Commissioner Clark?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I appreciate staff listening to us. And yes, our recommendation, strong recommendation is, you said it well, Saturdays. We really did think that may help us with people, whether they're coming in to town for the weekend or for errands, but having predictability when many people may not be working. And as far as this particular extension, that we're, as my husband likes to say, we're not normal. We actually do know when the hours are or where to find it. And human behavior is such that we have to remind people about when and where and what. And so some of the what questions I know staff is still looking at, but if we're serious about not just keeping our numbers, but increasing our numbers, people need to know what to expect and how to get there. So that's where not the original recommendation that was being brought by with staff, but as Mr. Chair, you said, it's not even quite an inflationary increase, but a bit to help us help move public attention and information. And then one last thing I thought Scott was really helpful about was for the public, we have now coordinated, consolidated the way the messaging and branding is. So we hopefully will start seeing some fruits of returns there, where if we just would eliminate this, it would cost us more. So he was, I think, successfully helped us understand that it's a bit like taking an airplane off. Once you're off the ground, the costs and the impact are a bit different than taking it off and landing. So yes, we are recommending this particular extension.
And I just want to also comment on that as well, in that it's difficult for me to comprehend why people would not want to do the right thing. We know it's not good to be throwing away the chemicals into the trash or dumping them into the soil or burning them and putting it in the air. And now we have the opportunity at which to dispose of them, but people don't do that.
Yeah.
And so by making it more convenient and making them more aware of that, I hope that more of that would take place. It's unfortunate that we have to advertise that, but evidently that's the day and age we live in, that we have to make people aware of that. But I do think there's maybe some other ways that we can do that that would be cost effective on our part as well. And I'd mention about, for example, the county fair, both out in Sauk Center and even so many of our folks, go to the Benton County Fair, so that the information and opportunity is there for them to participate. So let's see if we can get people to do the right thing. Commissioner?
Mr. Chairman, for the record, I did notify Shelley and Mark Latterall that I was going to have this pulled, and I also copied you and Mike on it, so it was no surprise. I think this is the third time it's on the agenda. I was aware that they met, but we just think this was a healthy conversation. I didn't think it should be on the consent agenda item because we should have this conversation. I had no idea what went on in those meetings. I'm going to support this, but I would really like, and I'm glad Mike stepped back in, I don't know, this really doesn't fit in the committee, I don't think, but I'd like to have a deeper discussion on this with everything that we've talked about. Just score dollars, and I hate to repeat this, but people forget what score dollars are. Score dollars are the tax that's on residential garbage, which is 9.75% state tax. And then the Stearns County commercial tax is 17%. And then Stearns County has taken, the angle of adding an additional 8%. So those tax dollars are used towards, and that's called the score tax. And the score tax, because I was there when it happened, was to develop markets. The biggest crisis we have, and Commissioner Clark and Persky and Lensmeyer have heard me say this in Tri-County, is there's no market for the recyclables, cardboard, everything, all the recycle. And so if there's no market, then of course what happens is then you can advertise and say recycle, and we want them to do that. But if there isn't a market, then, so somehow we need a broader, and your point has consistently been access. And I've said the same thing. When you go to community cleanups, people always bring their hazardous waste with, even if the mobile unit isn't there, because it's waste day. And so they bring everything. And if you guys aren't there, well, every time I've been at one, and I've been at a lot of them, when they close the trunk and they drive away, everybody looks at each other and says, where do you think that's going to end up? Because they came to get rid of it, and then if there wasn't access, again, what do people do with it? So education definitely is a part of it, but the more we can be accessible to the public, the higher the increase is going to be. And then if you create a market, aluminum cans are as low as 25 cents a pound now. Well, shoot, they used to be close to $1. But that's why you never have issues with aluminum cans, because there's a value. And so if we can create the value with the recyclables, which I think this should be a part of, that's the deeper discussion. Where that happens, Mike and I and you, Shelley, can talk about that.
Sure.
About where can we have that 5-year discussion on how we do this. Most counties do not add on to the tax. Majority of the county, it's a state 17% tax. We used to be at 10%, then we lowered it to 8% a couple of years ago. So again, it's not the dollars, and then we got an increased score return from the legislature this year, which we should. The state shouldn't be taking this, but that's my bigger philosophical. I'll support this, but I want to have a deeper, more expanded conversation.
Mr. Chair. And clearly, Tri-County is one of those places we need to be having it, as well as here. And Commissioner Bertram, I certainly share your interest. I mean, I've got a pretty deep passion about what we can be doing to reduce what's going anywhere, and I appreciate staff's efforts. We obviously have a 10-year plan. Still hope that we can get Tri-County to do a longer-term strategic plan. So we're really looking 30 years out, so we can create both some new markets, but also figure out better ways to dispose of our waste. And I've passed on to staff And to Mr. Chair, Sherburne County recently has entered into a feasibility study about not just them establishing a household hazardous waste center, but also the part that I find more interesting is a feasibility study of doing organics collection countywide. And those are the kinds of things that we can be doing. Clearly, when you have most of the population in 13 counties, it's going to be a lot fewer counties that are probably doing some of these add-ons. So perhaps at some point we can have a work session and really try to figure out what else we can be doing. And I'm not sure how much of that ends up being us versus Tri-County, because frankly, sometimes Tri-County doesn't feel like we're doing much. So maybe there's something more we can do here.
And just for clarification, it went from $10 to $8, right?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Notch, the environmental service fee that we charge
On your
went
property
from,
tax statement.
that's a assessment, went from $10 down to $8. And then the commercial are also 8%. So it depends on, residential is the $8 and the commercial is an 8%. And that's environmental service fee dollars, which can be used for any of our waste disposal systems. So that's a little different. Scores money that we're getting back from the state after they're taxing us. So it's state dollars that come back to us. So a little bit different.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I didn't talk about the per parcel fee or anything. I'm strictly talking about the tax. 8% commercial, 10%
Yes.
it's 8 plus the 17
Yes.
state tax. And then the residential state tax is 9.75. And then we have our parcel assessment
Right, correct.
per parcel,
Yes.
which is all fine. Again, let's use those revenues for the right reason in creating the markets and allowing us to have the hazardous waste facility. And the biggest thing I heard in the last year is the openness, that it wasn't open, because of the whole COVID thing and all that stuff. Well, we've worked through that. Now we're going to do Saturdays. That's all very positive and more mobile
Yes.
sites. And then I think the fair idea is a great idea. Go where the people are.
Yeah, just very quickly, because I know at risk of hearing about the horse being dead, is, AMC has been working on this, and just for the public, currently, I know it's changed a bit over time, and it's just so helpful having you, Jeff, having been there at the time. For the public, at this point, the funding is for recycling programs, food waste management and prevention, composting and compostable management, waste reduction, and management of household hazardous waste and other problem materials. And so we might be a little bit at risk of there having done huge mission creep, especially as most of the dollars don't come back here. But I think we can feel very good about what we're trying to do and hopefully become more effective.
Yeah, we certainly want to do the right thing and steer people in the correct
And Mr.
direction.
Chair, I'll go ahead and move approval of these 6.
Okay. I got a motion
I could second that.
and a second. Any further discussion on this topic? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, just a reminder, we will be meeting this afternoon, later in the evening for the accessory building discussion that's coming up. So that'll be coming back to you in the near future.
Okay. Yeah, it should be interesting discussion.
Yeah, it will
Mr.
be.
Chairman, on that point, I was going to do it under issues by commissioners, but as long as you brought it up, please keep us in the loop. We got the minutes and the agenda.
Absolutely.
Because I hadn't seen anything or heard anything lately. And there's, as you, I would assume, all know, there's a lot of interest in this. I think you're sharing information with a large group of people that
Correct.
contacted me that I forwarded to you.
Yes.
So, but if you can keep us, like, after tonight's meeting, just have draft minutes, or that would be very helpful.
Okay, we'll do that. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right. We'll move on then to human resources. Okay.
Right.
Human Services, yes, go ahead.
All right. Good morning. Morning, Mr. Chair and County Board. Today, we are here to present the clerical study findings. During the pandemic, the county, like many businesses, had to pivot to provide services to customers and clients. Since 2020, due to these changes in clerical responsibilities, many departments requested a review of their clerical positions as these employees were giving more autonomy to perform their jobs. There was an increase by customers in electronic service delivery expectations. With the changes in workflow, our clerical classifications have more critical thinking responsibilities than before, and their work assignments have become less siloed in alignment with the county's mission and values. Due to the nature of how clerical positions are spread throughout the county and how they are rated, it was not feasible to review only some positions. Therefore, the county partnered with Dr. Tessa Melvin of David Drown Associates to review the clerical classifications altogether. I will now turn it over to Tessa to present her findings of the clerical study.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Chair and Commissioners. I'm going to go over kind of the results, the process, the scope of it, our department findings, so how it impacts departments, and then answer any questions as I go, or at the end, you don't have to save them. Just a little bit on David Drown Associates. He was a civil engineer by trade and started the company over 20 years ago on the finance side, doing bond sales, TIF districting, and then about 8 years ago, we started HR. So we are the HR technical program for AMC. So when counties call with HR questions, they're getting our staff. And then we also do executive recruitment and then class and comp. I lead this area. I have 15 years of city and county government experience, former city administrator, also worked in Dakota County, and I have a doctorate in public administration. Kelly Jones is on the project as well, kind of talent management, more of the data analysis piece of it. So why do we look at this? This is always a question I get, is you want to look at gradual changes in duties performed, just like she said, you know, with COVID and changes, looking at how the job was, how it is, and how it's kind of forming, looking at changes in organizational relationships and responsibilities. COVID changed workflows, how they use technology, and the increased level of job responsibilities. And then lastly, you have a statutory compliance. You can't just assign, I want to pay you this and you this. It has to go into pay equity or comp worth points, and that's where the job classification comes into place. So the classification of a job is based on what pay equity. So every 3 years, the state asks the county, what are your jobs? How do you pay them, and how many male and female are in them? It creates internal equity or that comp worth, and they are only determined by your job descriptions. It does not look at market competitiveness. It only looks at your organization. And then your comp plan is how you pay employees. That's your wages, policies, procedures, how employees are paid, how they're promoted, or how they're hired, just so you can kind of understand how the two work together. So with this project scope, we met with departments to discuss the positions we were going to review so that they could express their concerns. Employees and supervisors completed a job description questionnaire, where they get to kind of explain their job, and a lot of questions like who do they communicate with, what kind of decisions are they making, problem solving. Then DDA evaluated those positions. We reviewed the findings with project team, and then department heads, and then we were at the CAT presentation. So I always remind people when we go into this, a job classification, I said again, is based on the job description. I always say it's best to look at it as if everyone won the lottery and you're hiring for tomorrow. So when I look at a job description, I'm looking at the formal education and experience needed for the position, not what you bring to the organization. So I'm just gonna use myself as an example. As a city administrator, I have a doctorate degree. It is not what's required, so I'm not gonna get paid for that. But I'm also a TIG welder who can weld for public works. Again, something that's not required, but I bring to the organization. I'm not gonna get paid for that, or if you did, you would round hole square peg your way out of applicants after me. So we're just looking at what's needed for the job. Decision-making, the nature of the process, how it impacts your work, the division, the department, the county process. So thinking challenges and how you solve those, communications, who are you communicating with, And what are you giving? Are you just giving basic information? Are you helping deliver a service program? And then the work environment that that position works in. So findings was, clerical staff is important to all departments, but their workloads and responsibilities have changed. So that was an overall consistent thing that we found. We reduced your classifications from 13 to 10. So out of all the classifications, we went down. And this is just kind of to show what the old titles or classifications were to what we're proposing them. And you can kind of see the position, the grade, and kind of the new recommended title to help with recruitment, just a better, industry title, and then the proposed grade.
Mr. Chairman, we didn't get this, did we?
No.
I missed it if we did. Would you mind sharing that, please?
Yeah, we can get a couple.
Thank you.
So I can just, I don't know if it's harder to read, but the senior administrative assistant was a grade 18. We're recommending office service supervisor, proposed grade 19 because of the supervision. Administrative assistant 2 was a grade 15. It stays a grade 15, but a title change to senior administrative assistant. Senior legal assistant was a 14. Same title moves to a grade 15. Administrative assistant 1 was a grade 12. Same title moves to grade 13. Assessing tech was a grade 12. Legal assistant was a grade 12. Process specialist grade 12, and senior public service specialist 12. They kind of moved into the office support specialist 13 or legal assistant. Client service specialist was a grade 11. That stays the same title but moves to a grade 12. Senior office specialist 11 moves to administrative specialist grade 12. And then in there, a treasury service representative would be grade 12 also. And then office specialist 2, grade 10, eliminate public service specialist 10, moves to public service representative, grade 11, and then eliminate the office specialist 1. So it's the kind of the 10,000 foot level of what we kind of looked at and what we did. And we did share. So once I went through them, I met with all the department heads and said, these are your positions. This is what I'm recommending. Are there questions? Are there concerns? And we had some discussion about why would you do that? Why is this grouped in there? And waited for their feedback. All were in agreement when we left those conversations, and then it went to the CAT. So the next steps would be to have employee meetings to communicate out their results and kind of explain the process. And then there is an appeal process. So the supervisor, department head, and employee must be in agreement. So if I believe my job is undervalued, I would have to have an appeal form that is supported by my supervisor and department head. I can't do it alone. And the whole purpose there is we want to make sure that you're doing the job you're supposed to be. Sometimes you undervalue your work, but we want to make sure that it's in agreement with the organization too. And then I would review those appeals and then communicate any findings. Any implementation changes would not happen until January 1st.
So as Tessa indicated, this is to make sure that our internal equity is accurate and that we're paying people for the job tasks that they're performing today as opposed to the job tasks they were performing several years ago, to recognize those changes. In terms of how this is going to impact the budget, this is cost neutral. One, as we were going into the study, I always try to anticipate what the implications of a study are going to be. But as you know, we always have natural turnover during the course of the year. The increased costs of this are less than 1% of payroll. And with the amount of turnover we've had in the last 4 months, that covers all of the costs for this for 2024.
That was going to be my question. Steve, you see you smiling.
Okay,
Wow.
well, that was on my mind too, because I figured it had, when you change grade, obviously there's a pay differential.
No, I wouldn't want to bring anything to you that was going to increase the budget at this point in the budget cycle. No, this is all paid for already and covered in the 2024 budget.
So my question though was more to, so then you have to reconfigure the job descriptions and all that for each of these 10 positions then?
Yep.
Okay.
And, just a minute. And then might I understand too, was it the state that made changes as far as requiring degrees for certain positions? At this?
That's a state function. The
Okay.
governor did sign an executive order for state jobs that waives a lot of the education requirements,
Okay.
but that did not apply to local governments.
Okay. And so that, my question would be, are there positions then that we are having difficulty finding good people where we should change the qualifications as far as degrees are concerned?
I can certainly let Sharon answer particulars, but in general, whenever we have jobs that are more difficult to fill, one of the discussions that HR has with the department is to look at the min-quals to see if, based on the job market, it's something that needs to be reviewed. So that does happen on a regular, ongoing basis.
Okay. Yeah, because oftentimes there's good people out there that, don't have the shingle, but they're good people, and we certainly could use them as an asset, so, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I did get a
Good
chance to
point,
talk
though.
to Mr. Hammis about this, but for the public, it's cost neutral because of the change of the turnover. And it's not just about 2024. My understanding is you believe we'll be able to function well with the new level of staffing because it will be less staffing than it was because of the costs, to make it cost neutral.
Well, yes. In the time I've been here, when I started, we had like 25, 26 different clerical positions. And so again, as time has gone on, we have reduced the number of titles to increasingly try to be more flexible and have our staff do more things.
Mhm.
Right.
And, also as technology has grown, the sheer number of clerical positions in the county has reduced over the 25 years that I've been here. And those positions have morphed into other things. So I think the county's in a good position with doing this to recognize where our staff are and what we're utilizing them for. And in terms of cost implications going forward, when you make the change like this, that's where the bump would be. Any change going forward after this is going to be de minimis inside the regular increase in your payroll costs. And so it's really going to be cost neutral based on the small number of people we're talking about.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner?
Mr. I'll wait until they're done.
Okay.
We're done.
Perfect timing.
You didn't have to wait long.
Mr. Chairman, again, I guess it's somewhat opinionated, but have you ever decreased salaries when you've done a wage study?
So I've had one client that someone was moved backwards. Most times you freeze them until the market catches up to them. Because of cost of living cost or whatever. The other piece of it is you don't know when that change happened, or do you know what I mean? Like even when we implement now, people will say, well, I want to still be on this step and whatever, and you get implemented in based on today's rate. And, so all those have to be considered. So that would be my answer. I have had one.
Well, but Tessa, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, Tessa, what you're really talking about implementation. Certainly you've had where you've lowered somebody's classification, and then you're talking about how you implement that.
Sure.
We've had those in our organization as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
So then you implement that by freezing it rather than decreasing their pay, and then in time they will catch up. So saying there was only one.
Oh, that was where I thought the question
Yeah.
was where their wage went down.
Well,
It was.
Okay, then I answered that. To your point, the classifications, yes, classifications can go up or down depending upon the job description and duty. But how you implement it, to your question and to your response, is how do you deal with that? Do you freeze it? Do you lower the wage? That's the implementation piece. Classifications can change.
And this is important, Mr. Chairman, just one, I want to understand it. Number two, we have 900 employees. Now, we weren't scheduled for a wage study per se.
No, Mr. Chair, we went through a triennial review of all of the positions in the county through 2017 through 2019. And so we were not scheduled to do one, but most of the departments in the county came to HR and administration saying there was a significant change in the clerical functions. And based on the large number of clamoring for review, we undertook this to reflect what's actually happening in those jobs.
And Mr. Chairman, so how many employees, and if you can't answer that now, I just would like to know, were affected one way or another?
There's 140 employees, give or take a few, based on turnover within these classifications.
So out of 900 employees, 140 of them were affected by this?
Yeah.
Countywide?
Countywide.
Countywide. And then the 1%, that was a interesting way you characterized that, Steve. So it's revenue neutral today, but the tails of that, and Commissioner Clark touched on that a little bit, the tails meaning future cost. Obviously, when you adjust someone's wage higher, that's going to roll over to 2024 and 2025. So, I mean, today it might be revenue neutral, but it certainly sets the stage then for, and again, it's not a judgment, but it's a fact, because when we say next year, geez, why'd we go up 4%, 5%, these things, it's a doughboy. You push it in one area, it pops out in another area. Again, it's not a judgment, but it's a fact, and let's just always keep our eye to that, which I know you do, but it may be revenue neutral today. I'm not so convinced that it will be next year. And then I'm curious, it used to be steps and lanes, is that still, or is there some new lingo now that?
No, we have a grade and step system.
Yep. And then I'm curious, do you allow a grade and a step increase at the same time and a wage increase? So if you do a 3%, which this year we didn't have to negotiate salaries, but if you do a 3% adjustment on wages, and it's that employee's time to go up a grade or up a step and over a grade, do you allow all three of those things to happen at the same time?
It would be almost impossible for all three to happen in any given year. I mean, grades are, again, what the position is rated, and so your grade is your grade for as long as that is set until there's another study. Steps are based on 2080 hours, and grid adjustments are based on contract negotiations. So again, they would get a grid adjustment and then their step whenever they've hit their 2080.
And Mr. Chairman, the reason I asked it is there were cities, including Painesville, that literally allowed the percentage increase, a grade adjustment, and a step increase at the same time. And there was years previous to me being on the council that there were 17, 20% increases, and nobody said anything about it. And then what we did was we said, you need to choose between the employee increase, salary increase, or the grade or the step, which of course normally you did the step or grade because that was higher than the percentage increase. But again, these are the things I'm not aware of that I trust you, but I'm going to raise the issue and the concern because again, this has a huge impact when you have 900 employees and the budget that we spend on salaries. And again, great people, good workers. The biggest thing I can encourage everyone to do is keep having as much in-person interaction as you can, because that's still the number one thing that I'm hearing of in certain departments, that we can't meet with someone, we can't see someone. Yesterday we had an extension committee meeting at Stearns, the West Service Center, and I counted in 20 minutes, 30 people walked into that door. We happened to meet in that corner, 30 people in 20 minutes. And you just think of what happens. And when I walked out, someone was walking out and I said, so how was your experience today? And she said, I was surprised at how fast it went and how efficient everything was. And I said, well, that's good to hear. I'm going to pass that on. She didn't have a clue to who I was. But the point is, if you have people, even back here when we walk in with the license, that interaction, and human services is the one that I hear the most, is that people can't reach people. And some people just can't communicate by phone or email or whatever. So do the wage studies and do the salary adjustments and do all this. That's all great stuff, good employees. But for God's sakes, let's get those offices filled and let's get people interacting with people. Because again, at the end of the day, that's customer service. And that, again, that's a little bit beyond this, but that's the way I roll. Thank you.
Anyone else?
And you'll get me that information, Mr. Chairman, by the way of.
We'll send this out, yep.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I have something, but I think Dr. Williams wanted to respond.
Yeah, thank you. I was just going to clarify, there is a cost to this. Yes, I mean, but it's built into the budget. So, I mean, I totally agree with how you characterize that. On a typical basis, though, people aren't getting three increments a year. If they're within the
12, yeah.
within the 12 steps, not at that top, then they would get a step. And if there's a cost of living or a contract adjustment, then they would get that. There's no change in a job classification on any kind of a regular basis, unless something like this happens.
And I'd like to see that step and grade system too.
Yep. I can send it to you.
Yep,
Yep.
appreciate it.
Mr. Chair, I might have missed it, and I'm not seeing our notes, because our notes say 126 clerical employees. I know that's give or take a couple. Involvement in our staff in giving input into this, if you could just speak to that very quickly. And then I have a follow-up.
First we started with the department head meetings, and we had employee meetings to kind of explain what we were going to do. They had the document to fill out with their supervisor. And then the supervisor filled it out, it came back to us. And again, we met with department heads to make sure they were comfortable with the changes. And then we will have employee meetings this week to explain the results and to also allow them to understand what the appeal process would be and what they would have to do to complete that.
Great. And Mr. Chair, part of the reason why I was asking this, we do have amazing people who have really needed to turn how they were doing things on a dime. And our residents now expect all of the above. They expect in person, they expect being able to talk to somebody on the phone, they expect to being able to do remote meetings, and including with human services, those are all possible now back again. And so appreciate their willingness to not just be part of our changing landscape, which it reflects this proposal in front of us, but also how people are really, our residents, our businesses are wanting to be approached. So the folks we're talking about in these particular classifications, that's really every aspect of our county, and without them, honestly, we'd all be sunk. So want to send a particular shout out to incredible staff for this. And with that, I'm going to move to approve this.
Okay. I've got a motion to approve.
I can do that.
And Commissioner Lenzmeyer, a second. Any further discussion on the issue? If not, I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And we have on the schedule a quick
Brief
break.
break.
And I think some people wanted to do the quick break, so we'll do that. We're going to take a quick adjournment and be back shortly.
I gotta remember to bring my earplug with.
Okay, we're back after a short break, and we'll move on to the next agenda item. Ben, we got you here for Parks.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioners. Ben Anderson, Stearns County Parks Director. This morning in front of you is an item to consider authorizing county park staff to continue to pursue the Paynesville property as a potential county park and to move forward with completing a property appraisal. So I've got a brief, or about a probably 10 to 15-minute presentation. I'm going to run through about the property. If there's questions that come up as we go through, please ask them, or we can wait till the end, whatever you prefer. So.
Okay.
So the property location, so this property is located south of the city of Paynesville in Paynesville Township. It's in between the city of Paynesville and Lake Coronis, and it shares a property boundary with the Coronis Hills Golf Course, and it is within walking distance of one of the Paynesville schools. The parcel consists of 202 total acres, approximately 135 acres of forest, 47 acres of wetland, 10 acres of grassland meadow, 10 acres of open water. It's currently and will always be protected by a Minnesota Land Trust conservation easement, which we'll get into details on what that means here in a little bit. It also has 3 wetland easements through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and that gives them waterfowl management rights. Essentially what that means is there's 3 water control structures on the property in which control the water levels within those basins for waterfowl to use it. And then it also it has a developed trail system. So the Minnesota Land Trust conservation easements, what these are is they're voluntary agreements through which landowners limit the use and development of their property to permanently preserve its natural or cultural features for public benefit. Excuse me. So I just wanted to show a map here that the yellow outline is what shows the 202 acres that is being proposed in front of you today. Can you see my mouse on that screen? No. Oh, there it is. Okay. So right here is an area that we'll talk about later. It's a pinch point in which we'll want to negotiate some easements if the board approves moving forward with this. Another concern that we'll talk about later that the landowner has worked on is an access to the trail through the Coronis Ministries property. Otherwise, you can see that it's very heavily forested, lots of big open grown bur oak trees through there. Oak savanna was more than likely the typical landscape that was seen prior to European settlement through this area. A couple of really nice wetland basins, and then an open prairie area through here. So we'll talk a little bit about the property use concept. So just keep in mind the purpose of the Minnesota Land Trust Conservation Easement is to make sure that the activities allowed on the property do not significantly impair or interfere with the identified conservation values. And so the identified activities and or development that would be allowed on the property are parking lots within certain development area, which we'll see on a map later, picnic shelter within certain development area, picnic tables, a few walk-in tent sites, bikes on walking trails, so no designated mountain bike trails would be allowed on this property, hiking, snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, horse trails, interpretive and directional signage would also be allowed. And I just want to note that if any of these or other activities create erosion issues, that they would no longer be allowed, or if that activity may create erosion issues, it may not be allowed either. And then also any other activities could be allowed, but it would take consultation with the Minnesota Land Trust to have any of those that potentially that could occur. So a little bit about the project history. So in April of 2022, the Park Commission had their initial discussion about the property and requested that the staff inquire about a price to the landowner. In May of 2022, the Park Commission reviewed the estimated asking price and decided not to pursue the property at this time, citing the following reasons: a lack of lake access, proximity to the Lake Coronis Regional Park, and then we currently were working on, and are still working on, the Cold Spring property at that time. Moving on into the spring, summer of 2023, the property was brought back to the Park Commission for discussion in July. The property owner attended the Parks Commission meeting and presented the information on the property. The Park Commission was asked to reconsider their previous decision, and they agreed to tour the property. After the tour, when the Park Commission met in October, the commission discussed the following concerns about the property. One being that connection that I mentioned earlier via the church property to the lake bike path, the need to have access to all the parcels through that permanent easement or permanent access at that pinch point that I pointed out. And also concerns were expressed regarding the long strip of land to the west where the adjacent landowner hunts, and questions were raised about where the funding for the property would come from. Also, there was some concern raised about the potential limited use for recreation and development through the land trust easement. I did want to note that the landowner has had conversations with both Coronis Ministries and with the family in which an easement, the family that owns where that pinch point is for the two parcels, in which an easement would need to be maintained, and both parties are agreeable to such arrangements. So at the end of the Park Commission discussion, they made the following motion for myself to present the interest of the Paynesville property as a county park and the pros and cons list to the county board. So the pros of the property that were identified by the Park Commission is that there is a willing and motivated seller. It consists of 202 contiguous acres. We don't see large tracts of land come for sale very often that are wooded. It has an existing trail system. It has restored wetlands, restored prairie. We have district commissioner support. It seems to be a good price, although we do need to complete an appraisal to confirm. Could have horse trails, minimal maintenance due to the Minnesota Land Trust easement. Natural resource, it ties back into the comprehensive plan in which we'll see a list on all the items that do support that through our previous planning processes. Protected land would now be open to public use. It's very close to the local school. It provides more opportunity for passive nature observation, and it decreases our park acreage deficit. Some cons that were identified by the Park Commission is the location. They wanted to, they were questioning, is it far enough west? Because what we're seeing through our master plan is we're kind of identifying two areas, one on the southeast corner and one in the far west where we don't have our proposed goal access to county parkland. Potential staffing, it does not connect to Lake Coronis, as most of our properties we have in our park system do connect directly to some sort of water body. Need to confirm connection to the trail around Lake Coronis. I've already addressed that in that the property owner has had the conversations to make that happen. It's close to Lake Coronis Regional Park, but it's not connected. This property is about 1.8 miles away from the existing Lake Coronis Regional Park. So this property doesn't directly connect to it. We would need an easement to make sure the access to all the parcels. Again, the landowner has gone through the work and had those conversations prior. So more than likely that could be obtained. There's buckthorn management. There's lots of buckthorn out there, but we see lots of buckthorn in lots of our parks as well. But it is something that, more than likely we'd want to address at some point. Limited recreational uses due to the MLT easement, and then potential funding options are limited. And we'll talk more about what potential funding options would look like a little bit later in the presentation. So here's a little better map that shows the property area. Just wanted to point out the building envelope. So this is the area that would be identified through the easement in which any of the trailhead, the main parking, the shelter, those kind of development-like areas and where that could occur. Here's the golf course, and we're just to show the relationship to the property. They also have a Minnesota Land Trust easement directly adjacent, so it's not a golf hole right next to the property. This area right here is that pinch point where I was talking about that need for that easement to make sure there was access to all of the property. And again, the landowners had those conversations. Sounds like that's agreeable. I didn't draw it on here, but I do want to point out right in this area where my pointer is, and that connection to that Lake Coronis Trail would be right in this area on that southeast corner. of the property. And again, Coronis Ministry provided a letter to the property owner that says that they would be interested in having those conversations. And then we could also have an additional parking area off to the west side over here for a different type of access. So property funding options, we've identified two. The landowner, first I do want to say the landowner did offer the property up for a price of $600,000, which is right around $3,000 an acre when you divide it out. And again, we need to complete we would need, if we move forward with the property, we would need to complete an appraisal if we're going to go after grant dollars to assist with this regardless, but that would also help us put a better idea on, is this a good price? I think it is, considering what we know other land has appraised at, but we don't know because this is a more of a unique one in that it does have some other things attached. But moving on to the funding options, option one would be a Minnesota DNR outdoor recreation grant program. Just that estimated at half of the cost. So this will pay up to 50% of the cost of the project acquisition, but the max award is $350,000. So, and then the same with the natural and scenic area grant. That one as well will pay for up to 50% of the acquisition. So either way, we'd be looking at making up the difference between what the grant would allow and that. The preferred option for staff, just so that you know, would be to go with option one, the Minnesota DNR Outdoor Recreation Grant, just because that allows for more park-like development, shelters, bathrooms, whereas the Natural and Scenic Area Grant is more restrictive when it comes to some of those development type projects. Just some quick estimates on future development and operational costs, estimated future development costs and their funding sources. So parking lots and signage, we estimate about $40,000 to put those into place. Park development, such as shelter, restrooms, things like that, we estimate that about $150,000. We can look at, obviously, Stearns County funds to assist with those, other DNR grants, and other local, private funding and things like that as well. Estimated ongoing operational and maintenance costs, we compare it most similar to our Rockville County Park or our Kramer Lake, the current Kramer Lake County Park, not the future, but probably between that $25,000 and $35,000 a year with travel, grooming, assuming some of those, what we had talked about, the concept use of this property being. Just some quick tax facts, because it's a question we typically receive when we're talking county parkland. When I went through and added up the 6 different parcels that make up this 202 acres, total was just about $2,500 a year, in which is currently paid. And then this is the slide where the supporting planning documents from the 2040 comp plan, all the different policies and nature pillar goals and water resource policies that do support this property potentially becoming a county park. So with that, I'm going to take questions, but I'm going to jump back to a map so we've got a visual as we talk through this.
Okay, go ahead. We'll open it up to questions for Ben if you folks have any questions for Ben.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thanks, Ben. Thanks, Mr. Chair. I guess at this point, I don't know if I could support this. I mean, I like all the layout that it could be more of a natural, the forested part. But again, because of the restrictions on there already, the price, and then again, us potentially having to lay out $300,000, plus then the ongoing, we're already going to, at some point, have to hire additional park staff, plus the annual maintenance. And I'm still, maybe I'm stuck on this, but, the Dairyland Trail has been out there for a long time, and I'm thinking, when we talk west, that to me would be money well spent to complete that, to allow, more individuals to see the western part, basically via the trail. I mean, this is a great property. The pinch point, again, I think limits the value. I guess that's my biggest thing is I can't see us, you know, we're still working on the Cold Spring one, and then now we're gonna add this, and maybe you get a private donor that would fund the difference, you know, then I'd say, well, you know, that would be great. My other thought on this property is, you know, it's so close to Meeker, it would be nice if it could be shared, kind of like the Coronas, you know, campground piece, you know, where maybe it's 2 counties owning this together, but I don't think that's an option, but that's just my opinion.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Notch. So the funding aspect, yes, it was discussed at the Park Commission meeting that private funding for the additional 300,000 is something that could be sought. Whether the full 300,000 could be obtained, I don't know. I mean, we wouldn't know until, you know, that moves forward. The other portion of it, of the shared use of this, I do know that the property owner has had some conversations with the local township, and previously had some conversations with the DNR and things like that, and has looked at other public agencies, and it doesn't sound like there's been much interest on that side of things.
Do you think the restrictions on there is what is causing that?
I don't know. I don't know what the
Because it does
reason
limit
would
the
be.
uses
but-
of that property.
Right. I believe that she did have a conversation with the local township, and there was some interest, and I'm not going to speak for them, but there may have been some interest in maybe some share of some of the maintenance, but that would be something that would have to be brought up with us directly with them. But that was just something that was brought up at one point.
Okay.
Because it does sound like the community down of the township, and I believe the city are supportive of it, so. And maybe Commissioner Bertram can speak more to that, but.
Okay, other comments, questions?
The seeming location, well, the actual location of the property has a couple things going for it for users. The location in terms of a major highway, in terms of a hospital, the restrictions on the property lower the value overall, but don't necessarily preclude the use of the property as a parkland. And in fact, some of the current folks that have an interest in it may even be an operational partner relative to the encumbrances on the property. Yeah, some appraisers would take it as an insult if you, the client, were to do an intake and pointing out all of these encumbrances. But it is entirely possible for an appraiser to miss those restrictions, and because a number of uses are not available to the current property owner, it does lower value. Now, for what the county would intend to use this for, it actually is a positive, but the county is not a typical buyer. It's rather fortuitous to all concerned that the folks that have this realize, or they should realize, hey, you got a limited market. For the county, that's actually an advantage. So with there are things that lower the value, but for what the county would be using a property for, it telescopes nicely into the possibilities the property represents. So if you got the proximity to small cities, the proximity to the highway, the proximity to all of the public or quasi-public uses in the immediate area. This is, it isn't like this is stuck out in, let me see, I can't use that word, in a remote location. But this isn't, and the seller is sort of in an awkward situation, but yeah, at least you got a buyer that has some possibilities. But I would recommend all of these encumbrances you just went through, before once you decide on, now that I'm retired, once you decide on an appraiser, have a sit down with them and explain all of those encumbrances. Otherwise, they're just gonna, vacant land, end of detail. So, yeah, it's, the property's got unique challenges and unique opportunities for what Stearns County be using it for. It's pretty, be fun to watch this go through the system, whether the idea flies or not.
Mr. Chair, so what happens if the appraisal comes in at like a 400,000?
Well,
they're offering 600. What does that do?
Yeah, Commissioner Notch, so we'd have to go back, and at that time, the board could choose to either negotiate. The grant won't pay any more than appraised value, but I mean, the county could, and I wouldn't recommend this, could pay more than that, but that would, a discussion that would have to happen with the landowner at that time.
Steve, I think that's a positive, because some of the folks that we deal with, we being the county, figure, well, they're the government, they'll pay whatever.
Right.
And an appraisal that comes in at a much lower value that reflects reality is a good start. So, hooray, God.
Did you want to, sorry?
No, I'm going to go after you two. I want to hear what you both have to say.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Ben, could you go back to the map of the park? Yep, oh yeah, either.
You want this one or you want this one or the other one?
Yeah, the other one's maybe a little better. Yeah, just because that pinch point, to me is a huge issue as far as being resolved and how it's used. Likewise, just from human behavior, you've got that dog leg there in between there. And so somehow, if we were to buy it as one piece, I would see the ability at least to erase some of that dog leg so that people would not have to walk entirely around that property to do that. And also, but just to begin though, I think between where we are today and this putting up as a Stearns County Park sign is, we're at quite a distance from that. As Commissioner Notch mentioned, we have a list of priorities and things that are here in this district that we are hoping to obtain, and of course we have that list of priorities. So likewise with the purchase of some of the other properties, for example, the piece in Rockville, we looked at purchasing that as neutral or no cost to the county. So as far as just taking park dollars and buying parkland, that's something we haven't done in the past, nor should we. This does offer a whole bunch of opportunities that, could very well be realized by the county, but also by that community. Being so close to the school, it's got really a great access, for it to be used for certain environmental reasons. Likewise, whether we own it or Ben, just another question would be state natural science area. Is that a potential for somebody else buying the property and us having the benefits as residents in the county, and they own it as a state natural science area, because it looks like it's very conducive for something like that. If we do move forward with the appraisal, I guess I don't know, would it make sense to take a look at the complete piece, but also if you were to separate them at the pinch point? I don't know, would we take a look at what's the price of one piece and one price of the other? Because the piece to the north has access off off the road and would be accessible. And it might be tough to negotiate access from the south if we can get that at all. And so that would give also the seller the opportunity for somebody that might also want to increase their own acreage, the landowners that abut there. So I mean, I would, if we're moving forward with the appraisal, is to have the entire piece and then separate the two, because that would maybe limit the amount that we can do with it. So again, the Park Commission is interested, intrigued. One thing that sticks out to me that could create a potential problem, but we're too far away, but I'm going to mention away, and it is a walk-in tent siting. If you can have camping in there that's primitive, I certainly would not like to see that abused, because there's a lot of people that want to tent and camp, but they don't have an access. But all of a sudden you just open it up, and you know, are you going to get 2 campers there a week, or are you going to get a dozen campers there a week? And what would be the impact of those campers? So you just don't know. And also just sanitation. Does that mean, you know, we have to put in a pit toilet and fire ring and a picnic table, whatever? I don't know, but that's further down the road before we get the property. So it's got great potential, and I have no trouble moving forward with the potential to pursue it, but there's a lot of questions as far as
with the location. I'm wondering if available municipal services, because of the proximity to the city, that would be a unique attribute that isn't typically available in park purchases. So there's that's an interesting piece. It got a lot of problems. It's also got a lot of opportunity. It's pretty neat.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Ms. Listman asked if she should be here this morning. I said I didn't think she needed to be. I said I think this is going to be a more global discussion at this point. As Ben has heard me say before, we're kind of asking if we're going to go on a date together. It might be a little premature to say what restaurant we're going to go to or what movie we're going to see. So first, I think we have to kind of start with the assessment to say, okay, what is the assessment? I mean, to me, that's the biggest question. Ms. Listman has made this her life mission. I met her in 1980, and this parcel, she's intentionally, most of us in this room and most of the Park Commission, I think, admitted they'd be developing this in the 5-acre residential lots. It would be a beautiful residential development. She didn't do that. This is as close to the Peck property in Stearns County as you can get. You know John and Linda real well. Linda knows John and Linda real well. This is the most unique. They're both identical type properties. The park plan says we need 400 more acres. The park plan says it should be in Western. So, Steve, you know, I find that interesting. You don't think it's far enough west. Somebody asked, you know, this is 30 miles from Bruton, 30 miles from Kimball, 30 miles from Melrose, 20 miles from Cold Spring. This is as far west. The park plan says more west property. Park plan says 400 more acres. The long-term plan says a willing seller. Linda's discounting this $300,000 to $400,000. What the original price is and was, and so she's discounting that right up front. We didn't have that with the Woken property. So, I mean, again, let's see what the appraisal is, but she's definitely not saying, it's a government, let's see what we're getting for this. That is not her mission. She wants this in order before she dies. And hopefully that's gonna be a long time, but she wants to have this taken care of, that she knows it's gonna go into perpetuity. That's why she partnered with the Fish and Wildlife and the Land Trust and those other organizations to help start making that happen over the years. Any of the issues with the pinch point and the connection to the assembly grounds, I helped her have some of those meetings, and they're both, the family on the pinch point and the assembly grounds are both saying whatever you or the county would need, we'll work with them. And so again, we have to finalize that, firm that all up, But those conversations already have had, because the Park Commission unanimously, by the way, we seem to put a lot of weight on the Park Commission on this board, which we should. And they unanimously recommended that we pursue this. And again, pursuing it to me would be the assessment. And then we start
The
looking
appraisal.
at the appraisal.
Yeah,
And then we go,
don't have
and then
the
we go from
authority
there. So,
To assess here.
Mr. Chair, you know, and I'm not saying anything against that, but the plan already, she's put it in place already by limiting the valuations, by putting these restrictions on the property.
Encumbrances, yes.
So, you know, she's already, I guess I'd argue the pricing, you know, it's $1 million parcel or whatever, because there are restrictions on there, so you have to take that away. And I'm not saying, you know, this is totally off the table. You know, if the next step is we pay for an appraisal and then we have the discussion again, that's one thing, but, you know, I still think eliminating some of these, the pinch point, some of these are restrictive issues that the problem down the road is gonna be, people aren't gonna necessarily respect. That's the only little piece you're gonna be able to cross. And what happens if, where that little Oklahoma panhandle is in there, you know, all of a sudden somebody decides, you know, we're gonna just meander through there. I mean, to your point, Mr. Chair, you know, if you can eliminate, purchase a piece of that to make that bigger, would be a good option, or to split the two parcels on appraisal and say, oh, okay, maybe we pursue the golf course next to the golf course and then deal with this other, or she can deal with that, or we can, maybe she'll donate part of it. But I struggle with this piece. Number one, we want to be fiscally responsible, but yet we're going to increase our future levies, just so you know that, because we're going to outlay money for this, and there's going to be labor costs, there's going to be maintenance costs in the future.
True.
You know, I know we're short of, how many acres are we short, Ben?
Well, it says a little over 400 with the Woken property, though it brings us down to about 166, which, if we look out to 30 years, actually comes back up over 300. So I would say between 300 and 350 over a 30-year period is where would be our goal.
Yeah, and maybe she would come back and, you know, negotiate some other options too. But that's just my opinion.
Mr. Chairman, if I can finish then, with the cost, again, you're right, and I think there was unanimous support for Warner Lake and for Kramer Lake and for the Woken. I know that, I was here. So, I mean, yeah, you've been doing this for a long time, making those commitments to quarry. You know, we just added the DNR part to quarry. So certainly this is what Stearns County has done. So it's nothing unique, in my opinion, but again, until we have the appraised value, you won't know. And again, if we're gonna start deciding what restaurant or movie we're gonna see before we even know if we're dating, we can certainly, we've answered, she's answered every question that's been asked. If you wanna make the panhandle bigger, Steve, we can have those conversations. Then there'll be more acreage and then it'll be more cost. So, but if that's really that important on a 202 acre parcel, hey, we can make that happen. What's going on there, in my opinion, you really need to walk it to get the full flavor of it. That's not what's making this happen. It's the main part of it with those unique waterfalls and those unique water areas. And again, in a very far western accessible property to a lot of different communities. You know, the regional park has a beach, has RV camping, has a whole bunch of different amenities that this is not gonna do. And I don't think we would wanna ruin this property by allowing that kind of activity. This is a very unique property that has a whole different mission, in my opinion. The tent camping, primitive camping, again, I think you brought that up on Warner, on Woken, the Woken property. That is something that there was an interest in, and that the Land Trust already has said that they would definitely support and encourage. And the bathrooms, you know, you have a lot of those bathrooms where they're environmental or whatever, or it is close. It's probably you know, less than a half a mile for city services by way of the the school. So if that's something that you really want to pursue. But, and then the funding, what I was amazed at, the county's never pursued private funding. And so I said, you know, obviously, wanting to make sure to engage the public, I said, well, I personally would commit to raising minimally $150,000 to $300,000 from the private sector. And I've had 5 conversations. All of them are committed to it. And again, they don't know what movie we're going to. So they're open to going on a date, but we need a lot more specifics before we start committing the dollar amounts. And the city, the township, the Painesville Area Community Foundation are all aware of this and are all interested in it. The township and the city are not interested in it. They're just, this is beyond them. They can't buy a piece of property like this and manage it and do what we do. And again, maybe we want to change our comprehensive plan on the parks, and maybe we want to change the number of acres. You know, this fits that plan, but maybe we want to change that plan. I'm not sure. But there was a couple of, you know, a lot of questions that Ms. Listman could have answered that she will answer, and you know, I'm going to continue to work with Ben and her and others to answer the questions and to make this appeal. And in the end, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But let's not decide, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No, I was just telling him, he has his hand up, and I've got a couple things.
Right. I'm not quite done yet, but thank you. And then some of the private sector, so the private sector and then the quasi-public-private sector folks that have shared an interest in this. So there's, I think there's a lot of, the uniqueness of it is, and the location to me is, I guess we're putting our money where our mouth is when we say further west. And this certainly does that. It's also, remember, then connected to the Lake Cronus Trail, which is an 18-mile trail around Lake Cronus, which is now going to be, after 2025, connected to the glacial lakes. And there's a movement right now to finish the glacial lakes. We have resolutions from Wilmer to St. Cloud, every municipality in the corridor, which has nothing to do with the county, to finish that 7 miles between Painesville and Roscoe. And we're meeting with area legislators on that 7 acres. So this is connected. And then, of course, we've got the island, the second island on Lake Cronus, which is a Minnesota Land Trust property, access to that. The interconnection of the trails and the existing public areas, I think, are all just really lined up well. And I think it would be a missed opportunity not to at least do the assessment to find out and to start that discussion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, we got Lee and Terrell. I don't know. Lee, do you want to finish where you were, or doesn't matter?
No, hell no, I waited this long, you know,
Okay.
and I don't have to go to the bathroom, so, yeah, I'll hear that comment, and then I've got something.
Yeah, I had a few questions. On the option number 1, what other projects do we currently have that could be applying for that money?
So all of our parks that are not eligible for legacy funds are also eligible for that outdoor recreation grant. So we don't have anything specifically identified for that funding source at this time, because we are working on bigger legacy projects right now.
Okay. And then the golf course in this property, I'm not sure where the city lines end and when township lines come in. Could somebody just help me understand for sure which jurisdiction along with us this property is in?
Yeah, Commissioner Clark, so this is in the township, is my
That's what I thought.
understanding. And does the school fall within the city limits? Commissioner Bertram?
Mr. Chairman, Ben, Commissioners, the school does fall within the city limits. And so it's, the school is the city limits. And then there's that little wayside rest that the state highway has or whatever. That's the beginning of the township. And then the golf course is totally the township, and then this land.
And Commissioner Bertram, Commissioner Clark, would it be say it's about a half mile maybe down to this property from city limits?
Max.
Ish, yeah.
Less than a half a mile.
Nope, that's helpful. That was some additional context. I think much of my current thinking really does were reflected in Commissioner Notch and Commissioner Persky's questions and comments. I think I like the way you're approaching this about dating. I will say it's been a long time since I've dated, like since 1983 on the early end. Well, at least I got married to the last person I dated, so and we're still married. There's a lot of things people look for in dates. There's a lot of things people don't, characteristics that people would say, oh, that's good, but this might be a deal breaker. So I'm not sure. I think this is about the movie theater or where we're going yet, but I appreciate what you're saying. For me, if after an appraisal, and I think for me, the appraisal is a different thing than committing. I'm not ready to commit to this land personally, at least not letting it jump over the queues. I think the easement pieces would need to be worked out. I hadn't thought of the separation of the properties or expansion of properties, but it's not connected right now to the other park. We do have some land in conjunction with Meeker County that's already in that area. We have several other projects that we already have committed to financially, as well as pursuing other grants. So I think the owner, it sounds like this is a great property and very much appreciate where her heart is. It is also not at this point at risk to be turned over into other uses. So from a queue standpoint, it would not be near the top. And partially what I'm wondering is both about the township, frankly, Coronis Ministries, are they interested? Will the DNR come and take it? There may be other entities that would be interested in pursuing or preserving what the owner would like to see happen. So there is a cost factor, an ongoing cost factor. That doesn't mean this wouldn't be an interesting one. And we have had many split votes, Commissioner Bertram. We actually, your predecessor pretty much voted no on almost every park. So it's, maybe this will be a split vote eventually. For me, it's almost like I'm not sure I'm ready to date because there's a lot of unknowns here and some commitments, even on that date, that I would want to know about. Again, for me, that's a little different than in moving forward on appraisal, but I'd want to make sure the owner knew that if we go that route, that it doesn't really mean anything else. We're still considering about whether we're going to date or have a date, maybe even.
And Mr. Chair, I mean, as far as advancing it to get the appraisal, I guess I wouldn't have an issue with that. But I would, because of the uniqueness of this and the opportunity for Painesville Township, City of Painesville, maybe even Meeker County to co-own, maybe there'd be an opportunity for a different kind of partnership for this piece of ground, where all entities, and if Commissioner Bertram, can get private funding lined up, I think that would be great.
I'd be interested if we have partners for the future on the ongoing costs.
Right, well.
And also the state natural science area.
Yeah, one
that would, for a school, I mean, that would be so
awesome.
close.
Right, and we could provide access maybe to that. Lee, you're on.
The idea of pursuing private funding has more merit right now than in many circumstances. For example, the fellow that currently heads up Central Minnesota Community Foundation is a Painesville resident. First time that's happened. So maybe Jeff's idea of pursuing private funding or letting folks know that private funding is a possibility isn't so remote. In some respects, the county has already ventured into that area. If you think about it a little more broadly, for example, Quarry Park has some private what we call them monuments or plaques or whatever of people that were, maybe some of them deceased, some not, but they're definitely folks that are friends of Stearns County and Stearns County Park specifically. So while we haven't pursued the donation concept outright, we've gotten some despite ourselves. So that has merit. So yeah, the foundation isn't just sitting around with buckets of money. I office with them. No, I don't longer office with them, but over about a 20-year span. And the way to move forward with an organization like that is to first plant the seed. Jeff, you made your career in sales. You didn't always sell them at the first visit, so this merits planting the idea with various members of our community. This is kind of, this might be a real unique deal. You know, it's right near a city, right near a highway, or you got a hospital facility that's right there, and maybe they can work something like this into their programming. You know, not all geezers are bedridden. I mean, some of us walk around, and you know, so there may be opportunities for that sort of thing. Yeah, it's unique, but it's also encumbered. The idea that this is going to be sold tomorrow, and you know, you're going to have, well, what's happening by my house, a 140-unit complex, which starts construction in spring. Ain't going to happen here. So anyway, yeah, it's kind of cool. I think the horse is dead, though.
I just got to ask the horse the question, though, and that's been that red area that says house on it. Why is that spun off? I'm curious.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, so that is the area where the property owner's house currently sits, and it is not part of this. So the total MLT is 206 acres, but 4 acres of the house would not be part of this. That's why it's 202. So that is not part, that corner up there is not part of what we're talking about.
But has that been platted off yet or not? That's a suggestion.
No, I believe it has been platted off already.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay.
It doesn't show it on this one. I believe it was really hard to see on the other. That's why I drew it in. So if you, yeah, it's really hard to see, but there is a dashed line up in this corner right here for the house.
Okay.
So.
So, Mr. Chair, Ben, so somebody else owns that parcel in between there then? That little bump out up next to their house?
Correct.
Okay. And then you mentioned something about hunting. What was, is there an easement there for them to hunt or what?
No, Commissioner Notch, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this area right where the point is here is where it is currently hunted by the adjacent private landowner. I mean, this, yes, is concerning, but we have lots of land that people hunt adjacent to our county parks as well, and that wouldn't be as conducive because it's not very wide through there for this particular person hunting in there anymore. But that would, the onus would be on them to make sure they're not shooting into public property.
Mr. Chairman, Marlene and I have a date once a month, so we never did stop dating, but we do go to different places and do things differently. So that's what this is kind of all about. The grants, if we get the appraisal and then we apply, which would allow you to apply for the grant. If the appraisal comes in high, we don't get the grants, the public sector funding doesn't come in. Yeah, I mean, obviously we understand that. But again, we kind of can't go to stage 2 or stage 3. And as far as risking the property, again, Linda's at a point in her life and her age, she wants to take care of these things.
Oh, yeah.
And we don't want to risk, in my opinion, because again, I don't know anybody. I know John and Linda Peck, and we embrace their property, same as this. I don't know anybody like them in Stearns County, certainly in Western Stearns County, that has property like this that's willing to work with us like John and Linda were, and look what that's happened, and like Linda is on this property. And if they're out there,
Did the PECs donate their land? Yeah.
Yes, they did.
who?
PECs donated their
Donated.
land.
They
We
donated their
didn't buy the
land.
property.
Quite often.
They
They
donated.
donated.
Correct. But my point is, who would do that? They
Maybe
did.
Linda would.
They did. Well, and again, I guess you can do that, but then as a commissioner and what I've seen, we can make someone donate the land after we paid what we paid for at Wilkins and Kramer and Warner. I guess, again, who, is it because it's in District 3?
No.
Many of our parks are District 3, including ones that we need to
But
continue
this property,
developing.
so I guess
We have
those are the
lots in District
discussions.
3. And
So
we look,
if we're
Commissioner,
gonna
we
make that
look,
standard.
we look countywide, and we have, most of the ones that we need to develop happen to be, continue to develop are in District 3.
And
but
Mr. Chair,
they're not in
if,
Western Insurance
if the
County.
next thing to do is to agree on just getting the appraisal, I have no problem
Yeah.
if we want
I
to
already
move
said
forward
that,
Yeah,
and
that's
get the
really, we
appraisal.
lost
I
sight
mean,
there.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman, to move forward on the appraisal of the property. And then, do you need the grant stuff now, or how does that work? You just want the appraisal at this point? So I'll make that motion to approve the appraisal on the property.
I'll second it.
Okay, I got a motion and a second to move forward on the appraisal of this property. And one thing we didn't ask is, what's an appraisal gonna cost approximately? We have any idea?
I'm gonna estimate between $3,000 and $5,000.
Okay. Okay. I didn't want to put another zero on that, so.
Right.
Yeah, based off of what we did with Rockville and a couple other previous ones, that's my estimate.
Okay.
Could be lower, could be a little higher, but that's my estimate.
Hey, Mr. Chair, one last question. What does the /Ellis behind Listman mean? The tract is Listman /Ellis 2 parcel A.
Commissioner Notch, Commissioner Bertram, maybe you can help me, but I believe that was a former husband who they've been separated. But my understanding is that this property is listed under just Linda Leisman's name, and the other entity is not involved in that anymore. But the conservation easement said both because I believe it was in place prior to that.
Mr.
happening.
Chairman, Ben, that's accurate, and Larry Ellis and Linda Listman are very close yet, and they're both on the same page with this, but it is totally hers. But he's in total support of this and still in Painesville and very active with this.
Is that the Ellis with the car collection?
No.
Hmm.
So the motion
So,
is
yeah,
made and second.
wait, okay. Any more discussion? If not, I'm gonna call the question.
Horses.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes unanimously.
And the horse was starting to stink.
Actually, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, if I could, I just have two quick updates on park projects that are going on right now, if I can. So the Beaver Island Trail has been basically 95% complete, and we opened it up to the public yesterday, or at least our section of it, so it is usable. So that's exciting. We will plan on doing a grand opening sometime next spring, summer-ish, for that section. And then also, I just wanted to say that Pheasants Forever is closing on the Woken property today, and we do expect that to be in our ownership by the end of the year. So those are the two things I wanted to bring up.
And Ben, I'm excited to hear about the Beaver Island Trail. Can we let the city of St. Cloud know that our piece is completed and we want that gap completed?
Amen.
Could we make sure they understand that?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, one of our outgoing park commissioners is now on the park commission for the city of St. Cloud, so I think that'll be well heard.
Good, thank you.
Thank you.
That is
Okay. Corey, we've been waiting all morning for you. Come on up here. Maybe we should have started with the veterans instead of ending with the veterans, but they deserve to be heard, and we appreciate you being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Here to present my annual report to the board and for the citizens of Stearns County. I'll try to keep it short, maybe condense it down a little bit for y'all. I think what I presented as a report, if you can see on the screen, this is page 1 and this is page 2. You can find that in the packet. Some of our numbers that I try to keep it as consistent as possible from year to year for comparative reasons. Overall, I think the themes we have that I mentioned in my actual written report are consistent. I mean, staffing problems have been an issue for us over the last year and a half, but not that we had a lot of control over because of the time frame that it takes to train in those. For those who are watching and for your information, just a little bit about Stearns County veterans. There are an estimated 9,528 veterans in Stearns County as of 2022. That number is right around 92 to 9,300 for 2023. We haven't received the VA hasn't published their 2022 population report, and every year they push out that new report. The estimated population usually is higher than what they originally predicted in Stearns County. I assume that that is because we have the VA hospital. We do get veterans moving closer to the hospital. That is my assumption. In the state of Minnesota, the estimated population is 294,000. Stearns County is the 7th largest county in the state by population or veteran population. Those that are closest to us, Washington County is number 6, and they have 12,900 veterans. Olmsted is below us, just below us at number 8, and they have 8,021 veterans. And Wright County is 7,800 veterans. So we're a little bit of an anomaly statistically, I think, as terms of veteran population. There isn't one really close to where we are at in the state. And then looking at our numbers for the year, we had 9,041 VetPro interactions. That was compared to 8,271 in the prior year. VetPro is the program that we use to track and manage documents and our interactions with veterans. What counts as an interaction includes like creating an action, a submittal packets, creating forms, uploading files, entering a decision, a VA decision, or entering an interaction like a phone call or a comment regarding a meeting with a client. Scheduled appointments and walk-ins. I used to only report scheduled appointments and walk-ins, and a few years ago I started reporting interactions as well because I didn't think we were capturing everything that we were doing with veterans. So we had 2,639 scheduled appointments or walk-ins last year. That was up from 1,645 in 2021. A lot of that was due to the pandemic. I don't have some of those numbers on this report. And that's a significant increase, but notice the difference between the actual interactions that we're having that are not captured by actual appointments. So pretty big difference in terms of what we're doing. In terms of work product, 1,606 claims submitted or actions that we submitted to, whether it's the state or the federal VA or the VA hospital. And that's down by about 60 from 2021. So 1,661 submittals in 2021. As I mentioned earlier, there are a few common themes throughout 2022 that really influenced almost everything that we did in our office. The biggest one was staff turnover starting in 2020 and then again in 2021. Basically, since 2020, we have had 3 resignations or retirements, and we've hired several different folks. 2 of them that we had hired resigned before they finished their probationary period. And it takes us at least 3 months after they're on board before we get them trained into where they're contributing to the workload. We did the most recent hire, and we are full staff now, but the most recent hire started in June, and at the end of September, he started working a full caseload. So that's very promising. But because of the time it takes for myself and the other VSOs to train and being short-staffed, we have had significant periods of limited capacity throughout the last 3 years. And actually, this year was the worst as it has been, although throughout 2022, it was consistently about 4 to 6 weeks for a scheduled appointment with us. And then just recently, I think the worst it was is at the end of October, we had some folks waiting about 6 to 8 weeks for an appointment. But I'm happy to say right now we are about 5 business days available, for an appointment availability. So we have getting that last VSO on board has made a big difference. Many of you have probably seen advertisements for the PACT Act that was passed last year. That was a substantial contributor to workload for us in our office at the end of last year and continues to be. We get a lot of calls and inquiries. The PACT Act is very, very broad legislation that addresses a variety of eras, a variety of types of chemical exposures. Burn pits are probably the one that most folks are familiar with, but it did add additional presumptive conditions associated with Agent Orange exposure, and it expanded the areas of presumptive exposure as well. But there are others. It dealt with radiation. It addressed some criteria for the VA Medical Center. It also, there was a bill within it that addressed direct lawsuit of Camp Lejeune regarding contaminated water. So you've probably seen advertisements from attorneys' offices also soliciting those lawsuits as well. So very, very broad legislation. We continue to get inquiries and welcome those inquiries, hoping to help veterans and their surviving family members in pursuing benefits related to that. The state also passed the post 9/11 bonus last year, so we saw a large uptick in requests for meetings with VSOs to file those claims. There was an office study for our office in 2022. It was a good result. We got a good review, I think, from the consultant. But we were in constant flux because of our staffing needs. And so as a result of that study, there were 11 recommendations. I'm not going to go through them. They were presented previously. But I just wanted to update that three of them were to continue things we were already doing. But 4 of the remaining 8 we have accomplished, and the remaining 4 are things that are sort of bigger project issues. One of them involves like an IT project and stuff. So, but we have been working towards those and implementing those. And then as far as the current state of our office, as I mentioned, 5 business days for an appointment. We have just recently, last Tuesday, we expanded back, or we're starting to go back into Western Stearns County. We met the American Legion in Melrose has volunteered some space for us so that we can get out there. We're only able to get out there once a month right now. But we are working with administration regarding a more permanent landing spot for our Western Stearns County VSO. So there's some different options on that, but there were a number of things that needed to come into place first. The first being our new VSO being able to see clients out there without needing direct supervision, and I think we're at that place now. So we're starting to pursue getting out into Western Stearns more consistently. And then last, just kind of goals for next year. My focus continues to be on trying to ensure good quality product out of our assistant veteran service officers in our office. So I'm focusing on training and getting those veteran service officers up to speed. Unfortunately, a lot of that experience just comes with interaction and the opportunities and learning as they go. But focusing on getting those VSOs experience and training is important for us. And then also our big focus, once we are now fully staffed, is going to be expanding our presence in Western Stearns County. That concludes my report. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
Where have your employees, you were talking about turnover, where did they come from and where did they go?
The people that left?
Well, and they came from somewhere, yeah. So both ends of it.
Yeah, so.
I don't need to know their names or
Fair enough.
their blood type or anything.
So the 3 assistant VSOs that left, one was an Air Force veteran, and she moved and resigned for personal family reasons, but it was expected. We kind of knew almost 4 years ago that these things were going to happen in the upcoming years.
Mm-hmm.
One was a retired Marine Corps sergeant major who had put his time in the service and was ready to retire. He put his time in with the county as well. And the other was a guy that ended up coming back part-time for us, assistant veteran service officer, and he left because he had hit that retirement age and was ready to go, and then ended up deciding part of the staff study was to add a part-time veteran service officer, and that since he had the experience and the knowledge, it made a lot of sense to bring him back.
Oh, that hurts. For what it's worth, I sent Corey boy, this is going to be polite, an unconventional individual that was a veteran and was actually helping veterans for various things on his own. And we got into a rather accidental discussion, and I got him to make an appointment with Corey, and I think that his efforts in the future will continue, but they'll be more focused because he now understands, at least to some degree, how your office operates and how it ties in to the rest of the services that he was already aware of. So that went pretty well. I mean, help is where you find it.
Yeah.
And he was one of the more unusual interfaces I'm sure you've had. So he was very grateful in a subsequent conversation with me for the time you gave him. And you took him seriously right off the bat, which isn't easy, but he was impressed. Your purpose in life isn't to impress my friends, but to actually deliver the service. And to your credit, you're able to do that in a variety of ways, so.
We do aim to provide good service at that point of interaction, because I think the most effective means of advertising is word of mouth.
That's right.
Having a good interaction with a veteran. Not all of them are perfect or exactly what we want, but we aim for that. And,
Yeah.
When we succeed, more folks want to come and work with us.
And our from what I can tell, our national foreign policy continues to provide more potential customers for you, unfortunately. It'd be a pleasant experience, I think, for most people, if for some reason you went out of business, but it ain't gonna happen. So thanks for your efforts.
Yes, Corey, I appreciate all the efforts you do here for veterans and folks in the county. And I must say, on Friday, I was at an event in Sartell and talked to a couple of veterans and asked them about the quality of service. And both of them said, and I have experienced this in the past, that they're very pleased with the treatment and service that they get out in St. Cloud. So thank you very much for what's going on in the area. So,
as a board historian, that hasn't been the case with that office over time, but it is now.
Commissioner?
I don't want to end up just duplicating what you said, but I think sometimes our appreciation is appreciated when we say it verbally. And I've gotten a chance to work with you in your office on a number of occasions, and your office is probably one of the highest places I try to connect people with, right? Because of their issues and their concerns. And sometimes people have had unconventional experiences. And when you were talking about the PAC Act, just thinking, actually one of my brothers, so my dad and two of my brothers served in the Navy, and one of them was, the whole thing about the Lejeune, that he's part of that, and he's had some pretty significant health issues. Corey was willing also to be helping vets from wherever they are, and I just want to thank you for that. It just makes a difference, not only to the person who's trying to figure out how to get to the right place or have their voice heard so they can get the right services they need, but also to their family members. And I'm glad we were once again participating in the project Greenlight. Hopefully some people got a chance to remember that that is part of our focus, and any ways that we could continue to help you and your staff get the word out, just keep letting us know.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Commissioner.
Dr. Williams, are we on, do we adopt this, accept this? Do we need a motion or?
I don't really think you need a motion.
I don't, okay. I just was not sure of the verbiage here, so.
Yeah.
Corey, thank you very much, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Corey.
Well, we're ending the meeting here. I guess we can hear from all those unconventional commissioners here. Starting Steve down at your end, if you got something for us.
Yeah, actually, excuse me, a couple things. So Saturday, I got to participate in New Munich. Some members from New Munich created a Veterans Memorial, and they had a dedication on Saturday morning, November 11th at 11 o'clock.
Oh.
So it was quite amazing, actually, the number of vets, not, they have the normal procession for the raising of the flag the first time, but the number of vets from all over the county and probably parts of the state that actually came, just to kind of witness and, hear them discuss how it came about. And, it's a kind of a beautiful addition because County Road 12, which was a state highway now, is the main street in New Munich. So it's right off of the main drag. So it's, it's clearly visible, and you could buy a granite stone, with either a past or current vet's name on it and where they served and what years they served. So that was a great event to be at. And then the other thing was I was talking, well, mainly with the sheriff's office, but Mike got in on this discussion. But I'd gotten a call from a resident out in Padua about this airplane that was basically flying like every 1,000 feet, just moving over with this big antenna on the tail. It's like, what's going on? It's spooking the cattle because it was, tree level. Well, come to find out, is a company searching for minerals. I don't know what kind of minerals. Apparently nobody knows, but the person who reached out to me got back to me and said, his friend who's heavily into aviation said this plane costs like $1,000 an hour to be out there running, and it was basically just gridding that area out by Padua. And they said they were looking for minerals. What kind? I haven't never heard. So that's the unidentified aircraft.
From deer hunters out there.
Maybe that's what, I don't know, but dinosaur bones maybe, I'm not sure, but yeah, so, and then I did participate in the Rural Action Caucus, event out in West Virginia, along with Commissioner Persky and Commissioner Clark, and Commissioner Clark, good job on chairing that. It was really informative having the governmental entities kind of give recaps, on Monday, and allowing question and answer. And, obviously there's always more questions than time to ask them in. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to go do that.
Okay, Commissioner?
Yeah, going off of that, it was really good to actually have people talking with us, not just at us, and then having an opportunity to circle back with specific questions that might relate to our counties. And I know we all availed ourselves of that, because the more we know, the more we can be helpful. So we heard a couple items about technology projects. I was even thinking, as Corey was talking about the veterans one, no need to tell us where we're at, give us an update now, Mike, but thinking about, there's been a whole lot of different kinds of things that are going on really to enhance services, to make it work better for staff and for our residents. The staff part's important so that our staff can actually be helping our residents in the way, because that's our only way sometimes of getting to it. So really appreciate that work. And in some ways, it's kind of like our construction projects. When do those, what are the timelines for those things getting done? And then just circling back on the veterans piece, I think for many of us, it's not just once a year that we're really thinking about the people who are or have served our countries. And agree with what you said, Lee, about the populations of vets having opportunities to serve, to grow that. And yet we still have less and less people in their families that have somebody who's in active service. And it is such a huge impact on those families, on those individuals, and whether they are in active duty or they've served, it's just so important. And I don't know about for the rest of you, but this year commemorating the 2nd year of my dad's death, that was right around now, and my youngest brother passed right before he turned 50 this summer. And the biggest thing in his whole being was being able to have helped serve our country. I mean, he might have been in for only a few short years, but the impact of that stayed with him. And the men and women who are helping our vets really make just a huge difference. I've been thinking under issues by commissioner, I'm tempted to start doing a staff appreciation. But my problem is I would probably forget some staff to appreciate even from the time before. Had an opportunity to participate in several different things, meetings in the last week that were not just part of our county and how we're doing things, but our county employees helping other counties better understand or have a different way of looking. So for example, we had Wilder Foundation did one of their Compass series, and one of our public health staff members talked about how we use GIS information to better serve. I mean, we had MacPac recently. We had people helping understand how we're making a difference with our corrections. So I mean, as we're thinking about the issues and concerns we have, I hope we can also find good ways to be verbalizing our appreciation back, because there are so many things that we don't even know that are happening that we think we have a lot to be thankful for. And that would be my tie-in, Mr. Chair, to Thanksgiving. So I'm very thankful for our staff for the many things they do to make a difference for our residents and for our businesses. I'll leave it at that for now.
Commissioner.
Lee and I attended the Transportation Alliance meeting, and Jody Teich received an award, and just want to do a shout out to her.
Yes.
Very honored for her to receive, I'm going to say this wrong, I know, but Konarski Award. It was named after a former Scott County commissioner, the award was, and Jody received that this year. And just I've attended that before, but a very prestigious group. Certainly a very prestigious award for Jody to receive. And as always, she was very humble in receiving it, and spent her minutes accepting it, thanking the Stearns County Board and Stearns County for allowing her to do what she tries to do. So just a shout out to her, and say great job. And it's great when we have people that are recognized on a state and national level and can do what she does. And also happy Veterans Day month, year, and happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah, you covered it, Jeff. I wanted to make sure that we acknowledged Jody's achievements. Didn't realize that Transportation Alliance, the organization, is 100.
Yeah.
Over 100 years old. I think 125 years old. So they've certainly got a history. So it was a unique experience. I can't remember the last time I went to one of their meetings, but yeah, really worthwhile.
I reminded myself that it's good to take a picture with Lee because he makes me look good. So I took a picture with Jody and Lee and me. So
yeah, well,
I made sure and put Jody in the middle. We shared that with the county, so hopefully you can put that on the Facebook page.
Okay. Anything else, Commissioner?
Oh, I've had enough.
Okay, you have. Dr. Williams?
Couple things. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a reminder, mostly to the public, that the fall newsletter, the county's fall newsletter will be coming out soon. And within that will be a survey, basically a customer service type of survey. And so I encourage everybody to fill that out and get it back to the county. We had a great response when we did it a few years ago.
Yeah.
We're asking all the same questions so we can, continue to compare how we're doing from year to year, with the exception of maybe one or two questions. So please fill those out. The second thing is we were going to have Janet come out and show you our new Meetings on Demand site and after the meeting here. But if we've run so late that you want to run, everybody will certainly understand that, and we can forego that to after another meeting, or we'll figure out another time to do it.
I appreciate not doing it without Novocaine, so I think we'll forego it today. So I just got a couple things. First of all, I think Commissioner Clark, Commissioner Bertram earlier also alluded to being open up with our more fuller service and the walk-in opportunities. And I do have to say, while we can be approached online, on telephone, text, email, whatever, there is a certain population that has the walk-in, and that's the most comfortable for them in meeting their needs. So the best we can continue to do that, and appreciate staff also being patient with individuals that maybe are asking the fifth, sixth time within the hour that had the same question, and, you know, treating them.
I do that.
Yeah, treating them with dignity is greatly appreciated. On the veterans, it was a great opportunity for me on November 11th at 11, and actually I think it happened at 11:11. A close friend of mine, David Peterson, was promoted as one of the Red Bulls to a full colonel, and he also served as a member of the Sartell City Council with me, served in Iraq, served in Kuwait, Guantanamo Bay, and he's got another mission ahead of him. So it's just a thank you and an honor for him, and again, all of the veterans that have served us so well. And then finally, wishing everybody a good Thanksgiving, and looking forward to having that celebration with my family, and I hope everybody else can enjoy that holiday as well. With that, I'm going to pound the gavel. We're adjourned.